And welcome to the Krueg Show, everybody. Larry Krueger with you, recapping the 49ers draft with Ryan Smith. How are you, Ryan?
I'm doing great. Well, I mean, I'm still kind of mourning Gary Payton's elbow, but let's talk Niners. That'll get me chipper.
It's funny. We were in the post game last night, and the Giants had the Dodgers last night, and the Warriors. Obviously had game 2 of their series with Memphis and all the controversy about Dylan Brooks. And about 10 comments in, a guy's like, all right, enough of this. Let's talk Niners.
Yeah.
That made me laugh last night. But it also reminded me that we have to do a draft recap. And it's funny because I think it's hilarious that people will do draft recaps. Like they just pick somebody. And now I'm going to tell you if it was a good draft. It's like, whoa. And either all the players like the back of your hand, or your draft recap isn't based on a whole lot, right? Because where is the film study? Where is the roll it back? Where's reading the reports? Where's looking at the information and who was available and how it all came down and what the team feels about how this player fits in or what position they're going to even play? Or there's so many factors that come into the draft and that weigh heavily on if it was a good pick, a bad pick, if it's a successful deal or not. And of course, we're going to find out, Ryan, over time. It's going to take time. It's going to take 2-3 years before you have a real good idea if this draft was a good draft and productive, or if this draft was a swing and a miss and unproductive. It just takes that time. But people want the instant gratification grades. So we're not going to give actual grades. We're just going to run down their draft haul, both before and after the draft with the undrafted free agents, and just kind of go state of the state on the Niners. The reality is, an old football scout, when I was a very young scouts in the game, they said, hey, you know what? You're so into the draft. You're so into, the personnel side of things. Have you ever done do you realize the failure rate on these players? And I said, no, I really don't. And it was like, yeah, the average career is 3 years, and, huge percentages of these guys who everybody says are going to be great are going to fail. And that's just reality. And the guy told me, and he's like, the NFL draft is about correctly identifying false favorites. Because if you look at this list, almost every one of these guys is an All-American. Almost every single one of these guys we're going to talk about today was the best player on their football team or close to it, definitely among the best players. And just because you're the best player on your college team doesn't mean you're going to make the 49ers, doesn't mean you're going to make the NFL, doesn't mean you're going to have any career of any length in the NFL. So it's about identifying false favorites. Realize that some percentage of these players are just going to crap out. They're not all going to succeed. And so we'll go through it. We're going to go through each guy by guy, and I'm going to tell you what I like about them, what I don't like about them, and if they are going to fail, why they're going to fail. And that, to me, is kind of the more realistic way to evaluate any of these drafts. And then we'll read some of your comments. I'm sure there's a lot of people already starting to line up. Bryant Culp says, what's up, Larry? What's up, Bryant? Good to see you, man. Or good to see you in the chat. And let's go. As Caesar says, let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go.
All right.
Let's go ahead, Rice. Start us off.
Yeah, let's start off with our first pick this draft. Edge rusher, Drake Jackson out of USC. So my question before you get into it is Jackson a week 1 starter?
Well, it's interesting. The 49ers are so stacked now on the defensive line. They've got about 4 different lines of guys. And I'm not even joking when I say that. I mean, if you got a front 4, then they got their second 4, then they've got their third 4, then they literally have 15, 16 guys at this position. They have far and away too many guys at this position that are going to actually make the roster. So the competition in Santa Clara, Rye, and we're going to be there this summer, is going to be intense. Why? Because 16 defensive linemen don't make a roster. If you're stacked beyond belief, you got 10. If you have a couple guys in the practice squad, you got 12. They literally have 16 or 17 defensive linemen, so they can't all start. Now, I do like Drake Jackson. Drake Jackson was awesome as a freshman at SC. Highly recruited, played at about 270, had a phenomenal year. Then dropped weight, couldn't get into a comfortable weight, and wasn't quite as effective. I would say, he said that he was walking around at about 270, but he showed up at the combine at 245. So one of my concerns is that he's not that strong against the run. But the reason I'm not overly concerned is that he's in the wide 9 and he's playing defensive end, and he absolutely can get the edge. And I was reading an article in Niners Nation today about how Kyle Posey broke it down, and Kyle's going to join us later this week. Jackson's true pressure rate was as good or better than Aiden Hutchinson and Kayvon Thibodeau, who were drafted at the top of round 1. So his true pressure rate was as good or better than Aiden Hutchinson and Kayvon Thibodeau. I like this guy coming off the edge. I think he's ideal weight's about 255. I'm not that concerned that he's not good against the run, that he doesn't anchor, because in this wide 9, it's all about getting up the field. Where the Niners really like this player, I believe, is that they see D Ford. D Ford had an incredible get-off. He got off the line of scrimmage. He had unbelievable, like a first step quickness that you can't coach. And that's what you have here with Drake Jackson. He's got an unbelievable first step. Then you combine that with a great motor. He's a lot like D Ford, except he's healthy. And so I really think he is a starter opposite Bosa, because I think he's a difference maker off the edge. I think there's some other guys that they can play in a rotation, and I don't expect this guy to play a full boat of snaps. They're gonna use him in a rotation. They're gonna rotate guys through. They're not gonna let him sit there and be a run defender, and they're gonna spot him. Snap here, snap there, a third down here, a third down there. I don't think he's a 3-down player. I think he's a specialist who's going to come firing off the edge. But for what he does, I think he fits their need exactly. And, if you're going to have Nick Bosa, you have to have the guy coming off the other edge. Otherwise, Russell Wilson's of the league just slip out the back door. Bosa puts a huge rush, beats his guy, flushes Kyler Murray out of the pocket. Well, if you don't have Drake Jackson on the other side, Kyler just rolls out the side door and into a big play. So that speed rusher who's burning the edge opposite Bosa is huge in this wide 9, and I think Jackson's gonna be good in that front. My concerns are strength and can he settle in at a weight. If he's 240, then he's 270, and it's like, why is he putting on 30 pounds? How is he putting on 30 pounds? What are those 30 pounds? Is it muscle weight? Is it water? Is it fat? Is he eating too much? I need to know more about this player's weight fluctuations, and I need to get him in the building. I need to show him what I want him to do, and I need him to do what I want him to do and settle in at, I think, about 255, 260. I think that's his ideal weight. If he gets up to 270, is he a little bit better against the run? Yeah, but I don't care about that. I don't need him for that. I'd rather have him closer to 250, so that first step quickness is really pronounced and he's a major factor. So to answer your question in an extremely long-winded way, I would say, yeah, I like Drake Jackson as a starter opposite Bosa.
Well, that's awesome. And then, just a little follow-up. Do you think that the weight fluctuations could have anything to do with the fact that USC seemingly, was kind of changing him around positionally from edge kind of his freshman year? Then he's all of a sudden he's playing linebacker to fit the scheme. And
it could be a lot of things. I mean, it could be scheme. It could be, what they're asking of him. It could be people whispering in his ear, hey, you got to be at 270. It could be that he eats too much or drinks too much or whatever. I mean, he could be his diet. It could be his training. I typically guys try to drop weight, Rye, for the combine so they can do better in the drills, because, at 245, like he showed up at the combine, he's fast. And he had a 3-cone drill. His 3-cone was better than Nick Bosa's 3-cone.
That's
his 3-cone numbers were incredible. So I think he smartly trimmed down like a lot of players do because they want to do well on those tests at the combine. And then they're going to bulk up. Now, the question is, what's his ideal playing weight? And since he went to the combine at 245, I would say his ideal playing weight is 260. If he can get to 260 and still have that unbelievable first step, I think that's his sweet spot. Anything over that, all people add weight over time, and he is a young guy, and he's got a big frame. He's a 6'4" guy, so, it's not like 270 is freakish or automatically he's going to be slow at 270, but it's got to be good weight. It's got to be muscle mass. It's got to be lean. It can't be just extra pounds, because what you really want in the wide 9 is you want your ends from that wide 9 position to shoot up the field, force the quarterback to step up into the pocket, into the lap of Javon Kinlaw and whoever else they have playing tackle, Eric Armstead. And, the guy who's going to win the most from the Drake Jackson draft pick, right? It's Eric Armstead. It's Eric Armstead, because Eric Armstead is an interior rusher who can close to the quarterback, and he's great at getting off the ball, but then he's really great at using his eyes, knowing where the quarterback is slid to in the pocket, coming off of a block and firing to the quarterback. And what have you noticed? When the Niners had Bosa and Ford, Eric Armstead had unbelievable stats. When you took Ford off the field and now the back doors open, now Eric Armstead didn't have near the sack production. You add Drake Jackson and Bosa to this mix, and they're both firing off the edge, the quarterback will have no chance other than to step up into the lap of Eric Armstead. And I'll make the prediction right now. Drake Jackson's draft choice will make Eric Armstead a better player production-wise this year. He's the guy who's going to wind up with a bunch of sacks because of the presence of Jackson.
Well, that sounds awesome. Okay. All right. That was great. All right. Let's move on to our second selection, and that was Ty Davis-Price, running back out of LSU. So I think the big question that sort of everyone has been asking is, like, do the Niners really need Ty Davis-Price? Do they really need to even draft a running back with that second pick? And I'll just let you expand on that.
Well, everybody wanted the safety, myself included. As that pick was coming down, I'm like, Nick Cross, University of Maryland, runs in the 4.3s. They got a need at free safety. It would add a lot of speed and athleticism to the safety spot for sure. But then listening to Kyle Shanahan talk about his depth chart there, they like Jimmy Ward. He still likes Tarvarius Moore. He has belief that some of these other guys are going to, step up and be players. So they obviously didn't view that safety need quite the same way that the rest of us did. But let's get back to the running back, because a lot of people were critical of this pick, saying, well, they didn't need a running back. They got Elijah Mitchell and they've got Trey Sermon, and this is an indication that they don't like those guys, or, this is an indication that they don't believe in those guys, and why not? You got to remember that they lost Raheem Mostert, and then they used he gave them a dynamic element to their run game, and then they lost that dynamic element. And then they really, what they got caught with was Elijah Mitchell, who's great outside the tackle box, but not great between the tackles. Trey Sermon, who, had good success outside. I mean, he didn't play a whole lot, but when he did play, he had good success as a slasher outside the tackle box, but not a lot inside. So they used Deebo Samuel a lot as a dynamic runner, but also as a power runner, as a guy who could generate a lot of speed and run between the tackles. And they used him in some short yardage situations. I think it's part of the discontent for Deebo is how he was utilized between the tackles. These are the interesting numbers to me, Ryan. Listen to this one. For the season, Elijah Mitchell on carries between the tackles averaged 2.6 yards per carry. That's not a good number. Trey Sermon on yards per carry between the tackles, averaged 2 yards per carry between the tackles. So they need a bigger back who could be dynamic and have some speed, because in Kyle's offense, he likes running backs with speed. But they also need somebody with some power who can run people over, who can run between the tackles and push the pile and have success between the tackles. So Ty Davis Price, or Price Davis, I think it is. To me, I really like that pick. I think he's a guy that absolutely can be. I'm not sure if I'm not sure it's Ty Davis Price, by the way. I had to look it up. I don't know if he's going to be an every down back. He's going to be part of a group, but they need the big back that can run between the tackles and have some speed and give them big playability, but also the ability to run between the tackles. If you're trying to put the game away and you're the 49ers, how do you do it? You're going to run the ball. Well, how do you typically run the ball when you're putting the game away? You run it between the tackles with power. I know they've got Jeff Wilson, who's got good size, but they haven't really shown that they've had that back that is good in short yardage, good on the goal line, good between the tackles, that they can just hand the ball to and he can make plays. So I think Davis Price is that guy. He weighed 220 at the combine, but if you watched him, he played at 230, 235, and he's pretty explosive. I love LSU players. They typically really play well in the NFL. They get highly recruited guys. And all scouts know if a player comes out of LSU, you got to take a long look. I'm not saying that if you play at LSU, you can't be a bust. Heck, Jamarcus Russell was one of the biggest busts in the history of the NFL. But I really like Davis Price. Now, when you look at some of his numbers, 36 for 287 against Florida. And I've heard people say, Kyle Shanahan only likes these guys who have one great game. Trey Sermon had one great game. But if you look at Davis Price, he had more than one great game. He went for 100+ against Arkansas. He ran for 100+ against Bama. Went for almost 150 against Kentucky. 7 yards a carry almost against Kentucky in that game. 8 yards a carry in the game against Florida. 36 carries for 287 and 3 touchdowns. He also, if you look at some of the runs, they're not all 5 and 6 yard runs. In the Kentucky game, he had a 30-yard run. In the Florida game, he had a 40-yard run. In the Alabama game, Alabama's got incredible athletes on defense. He had a 37-yard run against A&M, the team that I watch every week. And there's a number of guys on that defense who got drafted. 29-yard run. He had another 21-yard run in a game earlier in the year. So it's not like this guy is 3 yards, 5 yards, 2 yards, and he just got a bunch of carries and he's operating behind some awesome line. Their line was not as good this year as it's been in the past. It's not the same LSU team that won the national championship a couple of years ago. And there were games where he was the total offense when you're getting 36 carries in a game, my God, that's just like saying, all right, Ty, beat Florida, beat the Gators. We're going to hand you the ball 36 times. How many offensive plays did you even have in that game? 70? So you use Davis Price carrying the football half of the plays that you ran against Florida, probably on some sticky, sweaty, hot day in Gainesville. I guess that game was at Tiger Stadium. Worse yet, some hot, sticky day in Baton Rouge. So to me, I like this player a lot. I think there is a real need here. I think the 49ers understand that they can't use Deebo, and yet they need a big, dynamic back who can run between the tackles and still give them big playability. And I think Davis Price does that. So I like this pick. I would have liked to have seen a safety there. And I know there's other running backs in the draft. It was a very deep running back draft, but there aren't that many guys who have the size and the speed and the pedigree that this player does. So I like the pick, and I'm really eager to see what he looks like this summer.
Hey, Larry, I've got 2 follow-up questions on him. So number one, would you say that this marks the end for Trey Sermon? Because it seems like maybe Kyle kind of realized Sermon isn't the guy who I thought he was. And now it's like, okay, he's taking Davis Price to kind of be that Sermon role. And then the second question is, if you were playing fantasy football next year, just as like a thought experiment, if you're playing fantasy football next year, who's the back you want on the Niners? Is it Davis Price? Is he going to get all the touchdowns, like a souped up version of Jeff Wilson? Is it still Mitchell?
That's a great question. That is a great question. I think as a rule, I mean, Rye, you play fantasy football, so you know this. You don't want any Niner back.
No,
because Kyle loves to use a committee, and it's week to week. And today, Jeff Wilson's getting 4 touchdowns, and next week Elijah Mitchell's getting 3 touchdowns. I mean, literally, if you want Niner backs, I would say, if you draft a Niner running back, don't draft him high. But if you can get the right guy, you might get a steal because they love to run the ball. And then if you can stash, like let's say you took, Elijah Mitchell in the 10th round or something like that, that's fine. But then stash Davis Price on your bench because there may be some times this year. I think Davis Price and Mitchell will be the main ball carriers for the Niners. But you asked about Trey Sermon. I don't know what this says about Trey Sermon. I think Bobby Turner, the running back coach, who's not there this year, by the way, had some issue with Trey Sermon's kind of dancing at the line of scrimmage. Bobby Turner likes running backs like Frank Gore. They get the ball, downhill runner, full speed, hit the hole, full speed cuts. Let's go now. Read it and go. Pick your hole and go. One cut and go. Not this pick and slide and a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, sidestep. And that's what Sermon has. He has really nifty feet, and he's got great pick and slide ability. He's a patient runner. He's a volume runner. He's a rhythm runner. So he has to get in a rhythm. I really love Trey Sermon, and I think Trey Sermon is going to be phenomenal. Not good, not great, phenomenal. That's how good he is. He's got instincts. He's got size. He's got balance. He's got contact balance. He can push the pile. He's a slasher. I think he can catch the ball. He did it for the Sooners, did it for the Buckeyes, did it in different conferences, had a 300-yard day. I just think that he carried a little bad weight last year. He like a lot of guys who are unsure of the offense they're in, he's a little too tentative. You can't be tentative and be an NFL running back. You just can't. So now it's year 2. Now he's in better shape. Now he knows the offense better. Now Bobby Turner's moved on, so maybe he gets a coach that has a different vibe with him. I think Trey Sermon is going to be a hell of a back. Now, I'm not saying that the 49ers wouldn't consider trading him because now, I think he's a starting back and they may have 3 starting backs there, but maybe 4 if you call Jeff Wilson a starter as well. So it's going to be a crowded room. There's going to be great competition, but I think Trey Sermon is going to have a terrific NFL career. And I'm really, really excited to see him this summer. I'm not down on Trey Sermon in the slightest. I think the Seattle game showed us what he can be. He hit the hole harder. He ran faster. He ran harder. He slashed in that game. I asked John Lynch about him 3 days later. He said, I loved it. I said, I did too. Can't wait to see more of it. We never saw him again. I mean, it was like, seriously. So obviously there were some elements of Sermon's game that Bobby Turner or Shanahan didn't like, or they just felt like they had better guys. But Sermon will be heard from in July in camp and in August in the preseason. And I think Niner fans are going to love. First of all, the biggest improvement that you see in any player is typically year 1 to year 2. So I think the Niner fans are going to love what they see in the backfield this summer because you got Mitchell in year 2, you got Sermon in year 2, and you just drafted a big, fast back in Davis Price. So I think they're well fortified in the backfield. And they need to be, right? Because look how many backs they used last year.
Absolutely. And you know what? I know we're staying on this one for a little bit longer, but you mentioned that Turner's gone. I wonder if Anthony Lynn had any influence on this pick. And I wonder what his preference may be.
I guarantee you he did.
Yeah.
I guarantee you he did because he's the running back coach, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure he's in those meetings talking with the scouts. They've swung and missed on guys before, but they got a pretty good eye for running backs. I mean, name me a running back that they draft. Joe Williams is the one guy I can think of that they went after in the 4th round, and it didn't work out. But
you could even say McKinnon. I mean, watching him in Kansas City in the playoffs, he looked like what Shanahan got him for. You know what I mean?
Right.
We just never saw him on the field.
McKinnon broke down. I mean, physically. And I think you're right, Ryan. I think that was exactly what I thought as well when I watched him with Kansas City. That this is the player that the Niners thought they were getting, kind of a dynamic receiver out of the backfield. To me, in a lot of ways, McKinnon, in Kansas City this year looked a lot like the player that I saw in Minnesota.
Yeah.
We never really got to see the player in Minnesota, though. McKinnon in Minnesota on that fast carpet, they would throw him the ball in the flat, and he would bust one tackle and go 80 yards.
Yeah.
And he had that super gear of explosiveness. And I don't think that I've seen that since those Kansas City days. So, once again, it's people handicapping, a draft of people. And so there's gonna be failure built in. Not all these picks are gonna hit, but I like their running back room a lot going into year 2.
Yeah. And was Lynn in San Diego or LA/San Diego when they got both Gordon and Eckler?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's good. And I even like Justin Jackson.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Time to move on to the number 3 pick. Larry, time to do a little gloating. You may or may not have called this one. Danny, wide receiver out of SMU, Danny Gray. So I just kind of been wondering, assuming Deebo Samuel is on the roster, what do you see his role in the offense year 1?
Well, this guy was so perfect for the Niners that when I looked at all the wide receivers and I watched them and I watched all the film and I'm sitting there looking at these guys, every year, right, there's guys who, you have to look at their film and you have to look at it really critically. Because as I said, everybody's a superstar, right? And so when you're watching highlights of college receivers, they're all running away from everybody, scoring touchdowns and looking like Jerry Rice. And then you have to sit there and go, wait a second, what am I watching? What do I need to see here? Can I sift through all the great highlights and celebrations to actually find the essence of the football player? If you notice from the combine, man, there were a lot of fast receivers this year. But I would say at least a third of those guys who ran to that time don't play to that time speed, or they're too weak to really be much of a factor in the NFL. You can't just be fast in the NFL. You got to be tough. There's no such thing. I mean, there's guys who are fast. There's guys who run really great 40 times that just don't do anything in the NFL. Why? Because they can't beat the jam. They can't get off the line of scrimmage. Somebody puts a fist in their chest and they fold like a cheap suit. So you know what? You have to find guys who have, if you're looking for speed, then you got to find, do they have enough strength to, like in college, if you're a super fast guy, you don't get jammed at the line of scrimmage because they're so fearful of your speed that they may not even challenge you in a bump and run situation at the line. They may be in bail coverage all throughout the game just because they know they've got to be like running backwards at the snap because you're that much faster than them. Well, in the pros, Jalen Ramsey's getting up on the line of scrimmage and he's going to reroute you and he's going to hit you. And how do you beat the jam? And can you beat the jam when you've got a really athletic guy who also might be bigger than you and faster than you, standing, literally a foot or two away, trying to reroute you? So what I love about Danny Gray is that he ran 4.33, but then if you flip on the film, he plays to that speed or faster. He's electric. I mean, he is absolutely electric. Two steps, full speed. He's got great speed. And so there's the 40 speed and then there's the field speed. and you have to go verify both. And if you see a guy who runs a great 40 time and he doesn't look fast on the field, well, guess what? He's not fast. He's stopwatch fast, but he's not football fast. He doesn't have functional speed. Danny Gray has functional speed, right? I mean, this guy's two steps, full speed, and he's tough. And hearing Kyle Shanahan say that, his number one trait was his speed, the number two trait was his toughness, that's why they really liked him. I think he's the perfect receiver for the 49ers because he complements what else they have. Ayuk's big and physical and operates underneath. Deebo is glorified running back. He operates underneath. He's not a down the field guy. Kittle is obviously one of the great receiving tight ends. He can make plays down the field, but he's basically operating underneath. So they need that guy to create the space, to run off the coverage, to make the defensive backs tilt back and honor that speed and fear that speed. These guys all know, that when defensive backs do their scouting, they know who they're up against, and they know who can run past them, and they know who can't. And the Niners have had a group of wide receivers that just can't run by you. Juwan Jennings ran 4.7 at the combine. He cannot run by you. So get in his face, bump him, and crowd him. Deebo can't run by you. Ayuk, for the most part, can't run by you. So you challenge these guys underneath. You hug up on them underneath, and you force them to either make contested catches or beat you deep. And then, you probably have better speed than them, and they can't beat you deep. Danny Gray will provide space on the field. Offensive football in its simplest form is about creating space. Defensive football is about having athletes and speed and instincts that can close those spaces down. Danny Gray will create a ton of space for Kittle, for Deebo, for Ayuk. Man, if those guys were smart, they'd buy that guy a Rolex on day one and welcome him to their wide receiver room and celebrate his arrival because he is going to make their job easier. Now, when Deebo shakes free of his guy, there's not going to be the safety right there. Why? Because the safety is going to be deep because Danny Gray is running and Deebo's going to have bigger plays. Ayuk's going to have bigger plays. Kittle's going to have bigger plays because they're going to beat their guy. And in the past, here's another guy ready to jump them. That other guy is going to be deep trying to defend against the speed and the home run ability of Danny Gray. So I love this pick. This is the home run pick. He's smart. He's tough. He's fast. He's field fast. And he will create a ton of space. He'll make a few big plays on his own. He's not going to have lines where he catches 9 balls for 200 yards or something. That's not his game. His game is to catch 3 balls for 83 yards and a touchdown and create tons of space for all the other receivers. So love the Danny Gray pick.
Excellent. And then I would, as far as if Danny Gray doesn't make it, what would be the reasons why?
If he doesn't make it, it's because he lacks strength and he's because of that lack of strength, he gets hurt a lot and he spends a lot of time in the trainer's room. He takes, he gets hit really hard and shies away from making plays in the middle of the field because he does lack strength. This is a tough guy. So I don't think this is going to happen to him. And I've already gone through that a little bit, but that's the concern. The concern with all these speed guys is, yeah, they're fast, but when somebody punches them in the mouth, when they taste their own blood, how are they going to react? When they get jammed at the line of scrimmage and just bulldozed by some 6'1", 200-pound corner who just absolutely is, technically sound as it comes on the line of scrimmage, and they get rerouted and they can't get off the line of scrimmage, then what? Do they go into a shell? Do they suddenly invent injuries? Do they wind up living on the IR because they're always nicked? So that's the question. They say he's plenty tough. I don't know. I can see some of that toughness on the film. He definitely looks like a guy who can take a hit, but he's light. He's light. He's thin. Durability is going to be a major concern.
Okay, well, I love to hear that toughness stuff because it really seems like the Niners wide receiver room is kind of building like this little mini culture of just tough dudes. Like you don't think of wide receivers as tough dudes, but you got Deebo. Ayuk has really stepped up. He doesn't mind taking the ball and getting hit. Juwan Jennings, just an absolute beast. George Kittle shaking off tackles, doing all the dirty work. So I love the idea of adding another guy like Danny Gray that has the toughness and the speed. I think it's a perfect fit.
Well, you know what? More than anything, it's like if you asked me, and we talked about this, and I'm sure there's a video on our YouTube page about this, but what were the Niners' needs at running back and wide receiver? What they really needed was a dynamic runner, and they got a dynamic runner. And what they really needed was a speed receiver, and they got exactly that. They got two dynamic, athletic, explosively fast, a one running back and a receiver. And to me, that's exactly what the doctor ordered. So I love it. The other thing is Deebo, if Deebo is going to maintain his I want to be traded and they're going to acquiesce at some point and trade him, well, then guess what you need? If you don't have Deebo, you need a dynamic receiver who you still need that speed threat. But now you also need a running back of with some heft who also has some speed and is dynamic in his own right. And the LSU running back gives them the dynamic runner, and then Gray gives them the home run hitter, speed threat at wide receiver. So even if they don't have Deebo, they've improved their room significantly.
All right, excellent. All right, moving on. UTSA offensive lineman Spencer Burford. I guess my question is just, I think it's pretty clear that they could use some offensive line depth, some offensive line help. Do you see him having any chance of contributing at all this year?
Well, see, that's the thing with the 49ers. They do a good job of fortifying the offensive line? Well, I think they did a great job of fortifying the offensive line in that they took two prospects that they really like, who both look kind of nasty. And to me, what do I like about offensive linemen? I like that offensive lineman that's going for the jugular, that wants to throw you down like a wet tissue paper and just bury you and then pound you into the ground. And to me, it's a mindset. I think the game of football begins with offensive line play. Because it always begins, well, can you run the ball? Well, it's all about your offensive line. If you got a crappy offensive line, you can't run the ball. If you got a good offensive line, yeah, you can run the ball all day. In fact, if you have a great offensive line and you have the right back and the right play caller, you can do what the Niners did on their Super Bowl run and do nothing but run the ball in the playoffs. And they just ran it down Green Bay's throat, ran it down Minnesota's throat. I mean, that's how they won those playoff games with their offensive line and their backs and Shanahan calling run plays. So the offensive line is so important. The one thing that the Niners got in Burford that I really like is he plays. He's a 43-game starter. And if you watch Texas San Antonio, and if you didn't know, I'm not blaming you because there's not a lot of people watch Texas San Antonio football. But they had a running back named Sincere McCormick, who was the Roadrunners' #1 runner. And they set a school record for scoring offense and rushing offense. So Burford was a big part of that. 43-game starter, really long arms, really athletic, really tenacious. The scouting report they kept saying during the draft is he blocks to the echo of the whistle. In other words, this guy blocks beyond the whistle. There's no doubt he needs refinement, but for the Niners' needs, he's perfect. Why? Because he's versatile. He's played left tackle, he's played right tackle, he's played left guard, he's played right guard. So you have a player who comes from a football family. He has really high standards. His cousin is Sam Hurd, who's an NFL player. He started basically every game, 43 out of 45 games. He's a great effort player. He was a first-team all-conference player. So I really like the prospect, but still you're talking about, a lot of coaching that has to be done. He's not – I would say the Niners, if you're looking for an offensive lineman that you can plug in week one, it was a bad draft because I don't think they got an offensive lineman that you can plug in round one. But if you're looking for real high quality depth and to make that a deeper room, because I didn't think it was all that deep of a line last year, I think they succeeded. Not just with Burford. I think the Zakel pick, Nick Zakel, the offensive lineman from Fordham, played tackle at Fordham, but might play center with the 49ers. 6'6", 325 pounds, team captain, leader of their line, all-league player, academic All-American, 5-year starter, played left tackle, very decorated. Another guy, versatile, played right tackle, played left tackle. They like him inside. Then you look at, did he play on a good offense? Yeah, Fordham's offense led the league in total offense. And he's a tenacious run blocker, according to the reports, plays with a ton of aggression. He plays nasty. And I did see some of his film against Nebraska, and I wanted to look at that film because Nebraska's got some big boys on that defensive line, and he did a nice job. So what is he? He's a smart, tough offensive lineman with great feet, who needs to work on his footwork, his pad level, and then we don't know what position he plays. So as I said, right, I mean, if you're looking for Zakel or Burford to come in and start, it's probably unrealistic. We don't even know what position they're going to play in the pros. All we know is they've got traits that we like, and we think they're versatile, athletic, tough, smart, and coachable. So they're great prospects. And then after the draft, they even added some more offensive linemen to their mix, and I think they got some real good ones after the draft. The guys that really stand out to me are Jason Poe from Mercer, who's 6 feet, 6'1", 300 pounds, but crazy athletic. I mean, Ryan, if you saw this guy, this guy, if this guy were 6'3", 6'4", he probably would have been a third-round pick, Jason Poe. But instead, he's 6 feet, he came out of Mercer, and he goes undrafted. But, man, I love the movement skills. I love the toughness. I think he might be their future center. So Poe's interesting. Then Sam Schlater, who played at Minnesota, he played left tackle there. I love the Big Ten offensive lineman. He's 6'6", 325, and I saw his footwork. He looked pretty good. And then Donovan West. One of the draft guides that I have here is, I think, Athlon's, had Donovan West, the Arizona State center, going to the 49ers at 61 with their first pick, the pick that they used on Drake Jackson. This draft guide says they were going to use that pick on Donovan West. So the Niners gave him a $10,000 signing bonus. They gave him $100,000 guaranteed. Now, you only guarantee undrafted free agents money if you're pretty damn confident that they're going to make your football team. And to me, to get Donovan West, who's 6'4", 300 pounds, and then to get Poe and the Minnesota kid and the two guys in the draft, you added 5 good prospects to your offensive line room. Now, you need your O-line coach to coach them up. None of these guys are ready to go, but all 5 are interesting prospects who may make your 53-man roster. So, Bay Area Baller 18 says Zakel is a Patriot League legend. So I think Zakel could, we've got this one saying Zakel is a backup tackle. I don't know if he's a tackle or if he's a guard or if he's a center, but you can see that he's tough. All the reports are he's nasty, very smart as an academic All-American. So smart and tough is a great place to start for offensive linemen. Smart, tough, athletic, and versatile is even better, and that's what these guys are. So overall, I think the Niners did great things for their offensive line, but if you need any of these guys to step in week 1, no, it's not. It was a bad draft. So, and as far as why they won't make it, if they don't make it, it's really hard to say other than because I really like the traits these guys have. All I would say is the Niners are putting a lot on their O-line coach.
That's what I was going to
coach these
ask you
guys up.
about. Is what are your, because there's certain position group coaches across the league. Like, of course, famously, with the Patriots, it's like Dante Scarnecchia. It's like, okay, they draft an offensive lineman, he's going to be good. Like, he'll turn him into something.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think of the way the Niners have kind of molded their offensive linemen over the Shanahan Lynch era? And then also, is it true? Or do we have a new offensive line coach this year? Is Chris Forrester the head offensive line coach?
They did switch around the guys. I'd have to look up who their guy is right now. I think it is Forrester, but they've had as far as this year, there may have been a little bit of it. First of all, it takes a while. That's why, there's some teams that don't like drafting offensive linemen. Why? Because it takes 2 or 3 years to coach them up, and then they're free agents, and then they're moving on, and you've just coached him so he can play against you and make good money for somebody else. So, that's why there's a lot of teams that are like, hey, I don't want to invest a first or a second round pick on an offensive lineman because no matter how good of a prospect he is, I'm still going to have to coach him up, and he's still not going to be the player that he really is going to be for a year or two. And at that point, he's heading into the last year of his deal possibly, and he's going to get paid big money by somebody else. But you obviously need offensive linemen. So I think the way the Niners are going about things is smart. If you can find guys in free agency, go that route. Look what they've done as far as their line. They got to the NFC Championship game. They had the right side of their offensive line was Daniel Brunskill and Tom Compton.
Yeah.
Tom Compton was a street free agent. Daniel Brunskill had floated around. I mean, that's kind of a undrafted free agent type right side of your O line. And then you had Mack at the end, and your real strength on that line was on the left side with Tomlinson and obviously big Trent Williams. And now Tomlinson moves on in free agency. So, it's not that offensive line don't matter, but let's be honest. You almost went to the Super Bowl with Brunskill and Compton on the right side.
Even the Super Bowl,
I love Jalen Moore.
Yeah, even the Super Bowl year when we did make it to the Super Bowl, who is even playing center for us? Richburg was out. At one point, we were on like a third string center, I seem to remember. And there was a long stretch of the year where McGlinchey and Staley were out, and we just kind of kept rolling.
Yeah, except ultimately, it did burn them in the Super Bowl because Chris Davis kicked their ass.
Yeah,
or Chris Jones, I should say.
Chris Jones, yeah.
And they couldn't get him blocked. And his sack in the first half of Jimmy led to the pick. And he made an impact on that game. I mean, Chris Jones single-handedly ruined the Niners in that game, largely because they didn't do enough. They couldn't counter enough on the offensive line. So you need smart and long arms and toughness and athleticism. But man, if you can either get veterans off the free agent market that you can plug in, I think you're better doing that. Uncle Salty says the Niners O-line coach is still Forster. And Forster is, has had his own problems off the field, and you can look it up. It's all there. But he's considered to be an outstanding teacher of offensive line play. So and he's a well-respected coach around the league. That's why he keeps getting more and more opportunities. So, if you like your teacher, then you're going to like this draft on the offensive line because you got really 5 interesting O-line prospects that you're going to have in camp this summer. And, there's going to be a lot of teaching that goes on and a lot of projection. Are they guards? Are they centers? Are they tackles? The good news is they drafted Banks last year and they drafted Jalen Moore last year. And those guys, as I said, year 1 to year 2 should improve dramatically. It's time for Jalen Moore to maybe step up and play. I think the way I would look at things right now, left to right, it would be Trent Williams, Aaron Banks, Alex Mack until he retires, if he retires, Brunskill, and then at right tackle McGlinchey. So that would be your offensive line, and then you've got Jalen Moore, you've got Colton McKivitz, you've got Jake Brendel, and now you've got these 5 young players that you added to the room. And hopefully Forrester can coach him up. So, Sid Brown here says, Forrester also brought us Chilo Rashal I'm hoping for the best. I don't know if it was Forster's call to draft Shiloh Rashal, but Shiloh Rashal didn't work out, and I believe Shiloh Rashal was taken like a pick in front of Deshaun Jackson. So that was not a good pick. Obviously, Brian Jace says Jason Poe has potential to contribute too. So, no doubt, Poe's got he's short, but he's an incredible athlete, very explosive. I thought that was one of their better undrafted free agents, Jason Poe, who, height matters, but it's not the end all be all. And Poe doesn't have a whole lot of height, and that's why he didn't get drafted. But he might be able to be a guy who competes for the starting center spot. My guess is one of those 5 guys that they added to their mix this summer or this spring, this summer will show up in camp and be ready to go. Only thing is, I can't tell you which of the 5 it's going to be. I really do believe one of the 5 will step up. I'm just not sure which one it will be.
Hey, do you think Poe? This was going to be my last offensive lineman question before we move on to Womack. Do you think Poe has any shot of playing a little fullback this year? Maybe getting a couple goal line carries.
I do. And then if you look at the Niner depth chart, they have Josh Hockett as their number 2 fullback, and Hockett's I think more of a camp body than anything else. No offense to Josh, but I don't think they have an athletic powerhouse bulldozer lead blocker. Obviously Juice is a terrific weapon, and they can use him in so many ways. They can use him as a runner. They can use him as a receiver. He can block in space. He can find an athlete in space, and as they say, get stripe on a stripe on him, and he can locate that guy in space. He's smart. He's tough. He's athletic. I really love Juszczyk, but they don't have a backup fullback, and they don't really have that short yardage back. Who knows? Maybe Jason Poe is that guy. He's athletic, and he's about 300 pounds. So, and he's on a very compact frame. But if you watch the guy's workout, you can see this guy's a crazy athlete. He's just short. He's too short for the NFL's, they want everybody to fit into a certain box, right? And if you don't fit those into that perfect box, you get marked down. But Poe is a player. I'm really eager to see him this summer.
All right. Okay, moving on. We've got Sam Womack, Toledo, Nickelback. Obviously, the Niners, that was one of their biggest needs, is they needed a Nickelback in this draft. I just want to hear your thoughts, really, and whether or not you think he has a shot at contributing year one.
Well, first of all, I love this pick. Now, there's people that looked at it and said, "Oh my God, he's." Some people list him as an undrafted free agent, and he went in the 5th round, and what a reach, and this and that. Then you start going deeper, and you start looking at the film. Then you start looking at the reports. Then you start reading about the player. I love this player. First of all, the MAC is a really underrated conference. Really good football is played in the MAC. And he walked on to Toledo's roster in 2017 and then made himself a first-team All-MAC selection by 2021. So this is a former walk-on who developed. And so he developed into a ball-hawking corner slot defender. He's more of a slot defender than anything else. He's got great speed, sub 4.4, so he runs in the 4.3s, and you can see that quickness and that speed on film when you watch him. And then you sit there and go, well, okay, so he's a smallish guy who runs fast, but is he any good? And then you look at the ball skills, and the ball skills are there. He's got well above average ball production. 3-year starter. Now, he's not really strong against the run. He's an undersized corner, but he led his conference in pass breakups in 2020. He was first-team All-MAC in 2021. He was second in all of FBS with 16 pass breakups. So you're talking about a guy with 4.39 speed, very good quickness. He can play press coverage at the line of scrimmage. He's incredibly cocky and confident. He also has got good ball skills. He's good against zone. He's not an elite run defender, so he's not going to come down, come up and make lots of plays in the run game. What he is a lockdown press corner who's physical and cocky and confident. He's 5'9", 190. He was an all high school player in the city of Detroit at English Village Prep, and then played 7 games as a true freshman, had a pick, played 13 games as a sophomore in 2018. And I mean, anytime you see a guy, Rye, that goes from a walk-on to all conference, and then he's leading FBS in pass breakups, you got something there. There's a huge divide between I walked on at Toledo and I led the FBS in pass breakups. There's a lot of work that has to get done between A and B. And when you see a guy who's a walk-on and he's all conference and a 3-year starter, and then you look at the measurables and he's got good vertical, he's got good 40 time, and then you find out that the road scout who had that part of the country was banging the table for Womack. That means he's putting his neck on the line. And the Niners have had some really good success in their day 3 picks and in the undrafted portion of the proceedings. So that tells me that they've got pretty good scouts, because that's how you do well on day 3 and after the draft is you have good scouts who recognize traits. This kid is small and he's not going to help you against the run, but I think this is a player that's going to make an impact as a rookie. I think he's going to play. I think he's going to wind up playing in a rotation. The nice thing about the Niners is the need on the corner is not as severe as it was even, in season. Now they've added Charvarius Ward. Now they've got, Manuel Mosley slotted to play the slot corner spot. Ambry Thomas is a year older. Diamador Lenore is a year more experienced. And I think Womack's going to be in that mix. They re-signed Verrett, who gives them another good corner. So I like what they've got. I think they're fortified on the corner, and this Womack pick doesn't bother me. Just because, believe me, there is not a huge difference in grades between guys that go in the 5th round, guys that go in the 6th round, guys that go in the 7th round, and guys who are undrafted and get signed after the draft. Very comparable. To me, it's usually the 4th round is that cutoff. So the fact that they took this guy in the 5th round, was it a reach? I guess you could argue it was a reach, but I'm eager to see him. And I'll say this, the one thing I always look for is the disposition of these guys, because you need all the athleticism, the speed, all the traits, you need all that stuff. But you better, when you're operating on an island against NFL caliber receivers, you better think you're damn good. You better have that belief, and it better be you better be convicted that you're the man and that you cannot be beat. And I heard this kid do a couple interviews, and he's cocky. He's confident. He's like, man, they asked him, what's your game? He's like, I'm a lockdown press corner. It's like, I like hearing that. I heard the same thing from DJ Reed when he left K-State a couple of years ago, and I interviewed him on draft day. And he's like, hey, man, I'm coming in, I'm making the team, and I'm kicking butt, and I'm going to be the best. You know what? In certain positions, you would say, you know what? This guy's a diva. If he's a wide receiver and you're that confident, you're a diva. But if you're a corner and you're that confident, that's what we're looking for. So I like the Sammy Womack pick quite a bit.
Okay, since we're on corner, why don't we just do what we did with offensive line and just jump over to the next corner? Sorry, give me 1 second.
Let's see, the other corner that they got.
Tariq Castro-Fields out of Penn State, cornerback.
Right.
That's kind of like, is he a corner? Is he a safety?
Yeah, I mean, Tariq Castro-Fields is 6'1", 197 pounds, and ran 4.38, and played at Penn State, where they typically coach you up pretty good. I've seen some scouts say that his future's at safety, when that may be the case. He's definitely got the size to play inside. Then I watched all of the practices from Mobile, and this guy mirrored the best wide receivers in the country up and down the field all week long. He had some phenomenal coverage in the practices. There's some stiffness in his game. It's not like he's the most fluid mover I've ever seen, but man, he's got traits. I think he's well coached. At that point in the draft, I think that's a tremendous addition. And I don't know if he'll play, outside corner, if he'll play slot corner, if he's going to be a free safety covering, the deep third of the field in a cover 3 situation, or if they're going to use him. To me, I think he's one of those 3 things. He's either a boundary corner, a slot corner, or a free safety who's got coverage ability. And I think he's got a ability to compete for spots at all 3 of those spots. So I would say if you pinned me down, I would say I think his high end potential is as a safety. But yeah, I like that pick. I mean, there were smoother corners and guys with more natural mirroring ability than Castro Fields. But when you factor in the program he played at, the competition he went up against, how much he played, what he showed in Mobile during the practices, I like that pick quite a bit as well. As if he doesn't make it, it will be because he's a little too stiff and doesn't mirror well enough on the corner, and maybe is a little not physical enough to play the safety spot. But I think he's going to find his way. I think he makes this team. He may make it as a practice squad guy, but I like that addition as well. And then I'll say this: the Niners got they got 2 defensive backs after the draft that are definitely both worth watching. I spent a lot of time last night looking at these 2 guys. Taylor Hawkins from San Diego State, 6'1", 205. He's another guy. He played corner for San Diego State. If you watched the Aztecs, they had a really good defense this year. He had 62 tackles, 2 picks, 10 passes defensed. He had a forced fumble this year. And, he's a productive football player on a really good defense. Now, I think Taylor Hawkins is a safety in the NFL. I don't think he's a corner. If he's a corner, he's a zone corner only. But I really think he's a safety, but I like his coverage ability at safety, and I love his competitiveness. This guy's a smart football player who is naturally flowing in the right direction. So his instincts are good. His ball skills are good. The production is good. Now, he's not fast enough at 6'1", 205 to play the corner in the NFL. He'll get beat down the field by guys with big-time speed. The Danny Grays of the world are going to absolutely run right by this guy in camp this summer. But he's competitive as hell. As I said, he was on a really good defense, and he's 6'1", 205 with a frame that he could put another 10 pounds on and maybe not lose too much of a step off as far as speed goes. I think Hawkins is going to be a really interesting safety. The other guy they got this after the draft, I'm even more excited about. I watched him last night for about a half hour. Quantrez Knight. Now, Quantrez Knight is a good football player. I don't know how much you watched of UCLA this year, but this guy was terrific for UCLA. He, really a good, solid football player who makes a lot of plays. Let me give you an idea about Quantrez. In his 2 seasons with the Bruins, he did not miss a single game. He racked up 104 tackles, 13 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. They used this guy as a blitzer, 5 passes defensed, and a fumble recovery that he returned for a touchdown. He was an all Pac-12 second teamer this year. He led the Bruins in tackles and tackles for loss. You could not watch UCLA and not see Quantrez Knight. He's 6 feet, 199. Why did he not get drafted? Because he doesn't run exceptionally well. But, man, he's very aggressive against the run. He's a playmaker. Really, really competitive football player. He was like one of the leaders of their team, and you could see it. He was like one of the emotional leaders in their secondary. And to get Quantrez Knight after the draft, I think that was a terrific addition. I think this guy makes this football team as a coverage safety. I think there's a chance he could play nickel, but he makes tackles. He brings you to the ground. A very sure tackler, and a guy who, he was the alpha. You're always looking for the leader. And Quantrez Knight was absolutely the leader in that secondary for the Bruins. So 6 feet, 200 pounds, ordinary movement skills, but man, he's a football player. And if you watch the film, You could not watch UCLA this year and not see Quantrez. So he's thrilled to be a Niner. He's already tweeted out pictures of himself in a Niner uniform. I don't know if you saw that, Ryan.
Was he the one who was playing Madden with himself?
No, that's Leon O'Neal.
Oh, okay,
Leon
okay.
O'Neal, who we'll get to in a bit. But Quantrez Knight, as I said, he was the alpha in that UCLA secondary, and I'm really eager to see what he looks like this summer because he's another guy. His numbers as far as speed don't look very good. Then you watch the film, and you're watching him against top caliber competition in the Pac-12, and he was fast enough. He made plays against the run. He made plays where he blitzed the quarterback. He made plays in the flat. He made plays down the field. He's a very sure tackler and a very confident football player.
That all sounds awesome. I'm shocked he didn't get drafted. How did he go undrafted?
Because he didn't run fast. You know, he ran an ordinary time. And then when I say ordinary, it was like 4.6, something like that.
Okay.
And once again, it's like in the NFL, if you draft a guy who's got, if you draft a guy who can't play, but he runs 4.4, then you can say, hey, look, he had you wanted to know who the best players were. I gave you the best athletes. They're right there. Coach them up. Do your job. And the scout can pass the buck to the coaching staff. But in reality, if your scouts are invested, I mean, the scout has to be able to answer for why he's saying take this guy in the 5th round. So when a guy doesn't run for the stopwatch and it's all based on a projection and you're putting your neck in the chopping block. You're saying, hey, you know what? Yeah, this guy runs 4.61, but take him anyway because I know he's fast enough. Well, then he gets to camp, and if he's not fast enough or he gets burned down the field, suddenly it's like, you know what? Dump that scout. So the scouts always hide behind the guys who have the better testing numbers because it's their way to say, hey, I told you so. You just didn't coach him up. In reality, there's guys who run 4.6 who are better than guys who run 4.4. And
they're faster on the field.
And faster, functionally faster than guys who run 4.49. So it's,
look at Kyle Hamilton. I mean, what did he ran close to a 4.7 at his pro day.
And he's a blue chipper who I think is going to the Pro Bowl for the Ravens.
Yep.
So I love Quantrez Knight, and I can't wait to see him this summer. I think he's going to make the team.
Well, that's awesome, and I'm really excited about this one because I know you are very excited about this pick. We got Kalia Davis out of UCF. So I did notice this as well. It was on my timeline. The UCF like football Twitter account tweeted out that the Niners got the most versatile guy in the draft. So I was looking up a little bit of stuff about him. I candidly haven't watched any tape, but I mean, 300 pounds, former linebacker, it looks like, maybe he dropped a little bit because he, missed some time with injuries, but he seems like he's just like brimming with potential. And I sort of was just wondering, what do you envision him as a D tackle? Do you envision him as kind of taking some of that DJ Jones run stuffer type thing? Or is he kind of more of a guy that's going to get after the quarterback? I'll just let you cook on this one.
Yeah, this is my favorite player in this draft from the Niners. I mean, Kalia Davis. I mean, he wore number 22. I mean, first of all, how many D tackles wear 22? You just don't see it. He's 6'1". He's about 310. And he used to play. He's played all 3 linebacker spots. Played the Mike, played the Will, played the Sam. And now has played defensive end, and now has gotten to the point where he's playing defensive tackle. 6'1", so he doesn't have a big frame. I can see the DJ Jones comparisons because DJ was 6'1", 320, and this guy's 6'1", 310 or whatever. But they're different players. DJ was the strongest guy in the Niner weight room. DJ is the kind of guy that can lift more than everybody else. And not only is he weight room strong, he's functionally strong. And DJ was a 2-gapper who you had to combo block to get him out of there. This guy's got the same dimensions to DJ, but he's not DJ against the run. But DJ is not Kalia Davis against the pass. Kalia Davis is a pass rusher. He's what they call a rolling ball of butcher knives. I mean, that's the best way to describe this guy. He plays incredibly fast. He shoots gaps. He's electric. I mean, he's just, you cannot block him. He'll twist and turn and fight and claw. And as they said, he's got great leverage because he's 6'1", 310. And he's got unbelievable speed and movement ability in a short area. You're talking about the trait that stands out on this player, which is hard to believe because he's 6'1", 310. It's quickness. That's his trait. You know, I mean, I thought DJ Jones was quick, but DJ Jones's greatest trait was strength. They're both the same size roughly, but this guy's awesome trait is movement. His lateral agility is incredible at 310. His motor is nonstop. His quickness off of blocks in a small area is incredible. I mean, this guy bounces off guys. He makes plays. He's scheme versatile. Where you're really going to love Kalia Davis is when you're leading in a game late in the game and teams have to pass. And now you can throw this guy inside and take Javon Kinlaw off the field. And now you've got Armstead and Kalia Davis rushing from inside and Bosa and Drake Jackson rushing off the edges. And now you've got 4 rushers, you know. And if you watch the Eagles, I thought the Eagles did something when they won the Super Bowl a couple of years ago that was interesting. Basically, every guy on their defensive line could rush the passer. And that's where the NFL is going right now. I hate to say it because the Niners just invested in number 1 in Kinlaw, but the guy from Georgia, the monster. Guy, Jordan Davis, Kinlaw, these 2 down, who else I'm thinking of? The guy was in Seattle, who played at Bama. These 2 down run stuffers are kind of a thing of the past because it's such a passing league. Teams will throw on any down that you got to be able to rush the passer if you're a defensive lineman at whatever spot. There is no such thing as I'm a great defensive lineman, but I don't rush the passer. You're not a great defensive lineman if you don't rush the passer. Ted Washington, once upon a time, was a really strong nose guard for the 49ers, had 0 pass rush, played a decade in the NFL. You have to be able to rush the passer. And that's why Kinlaw's movement ability is so important to get that knee right, to get him in camp this summer ready to roll, because Kinlaw's played 18 games. He has 1.5 sacks. He cannot rush the passer. If Kinlaw ever sacks Kyler Murray, it will just be an aberration. It will be like a miracle. It will be that Kyler, rolled out, didn't see him, and rolled right into his lap, and that's how the guy got the sack. I mean, literally, he has no potential at all to sack the quarterback. Now they have Mo Hurst as Portola 45 is pointing out. 420 Savage says, Kinlaw, I hope he has a healthy season. I do as well. But you lost Kentavious Street, and he was an interior rusher. You lost DJ Jones, who gave you some interior pass rush, despite the fact he was more of a run player. So you needed that interior rusher. And man, an interior rusher, you could use your first round pick on an interior rusher. And in this case, they got Kalia Davis on day 3. So the downside with Kalia Davis is he had a knee surgery, and they may not be able to use him at all this year. He may be a redshirt type player this year. In fact, they may put him on the PUP list, and he may never play a down this year for the 49ers. So that's the downside. The downside is they drafted a player who's not ready to contribute. And if he doesn't make it, it could be because that knee becomes chronic and he just can't get on the field enough. And I do think you can move Kalia Davis a little bit in the run game. So he needs to work on his anchor strength. But you know what? That's really not his game. His game is to shoot gaps, rush the passer, put heat on the quarterback. And I think that was a total steal. And I don't think we'll see him this year. They'll probably figure out a way to put him on the PUP list and kind of redshirt him for a year. But man, next July, not in a month, not in 2 months, I should say in July, next year, 14 months from now, Kalia Davis is going to be the Niners are going to be thrilled they drafted this guy. So this one is deferred gratification. Dallas did this when they took Damone Clark at LSU, and he's got a cervical issue, spinal issue. He's not going to play this year. But guess what? Next year, he's going to get healthy, and he's going to go to the Pro Bowl, and he's going to be playing for the Cowboys. And I would say the same thing about Kalia Davis. The downside is he's not going to do anything for you this year. The downside is he's got a knee problem. The upside is in a year, you're going to have a player that probably could have gone in the third round, and you got him on day 3, late on day 3.
Hearing you say that still makes me mad that Nakobe Dean dropped all the way to the third round, even if he doesn't play this year.
Eagles. Nakobe Dean's a steal, but he's 5'11", 230, and he had a lot of mileage, and a lot of people were worried about his body holding up. And you know what? Let's not worry about what he can't do. Let's worry about what he can do. And the Eagles just got themselves a great linebacker for sure. They got him, third round?
83rd pick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great pick by Howie Roseman.
Great pick. Okay. All right. Moving on to Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy, Iowa State quarterback. My question with him, I don't mind them picking a quarterback. It's just, I don't know where your philosophy lies with this, but I would have liked to have a backup quarterback that has some of the same traits as Trey Lance. And so they can kind of still run the same offense in a similar way that, Lamar Jackson goes down and all of a sudden Huntley is still running the same thing. Switching up sports, if Steph Curry goes down with an injury, they can still run the Warriors offense with Jordan Poole. It's just, I like that continuity. And so with that in mind, I'd like to hear what you think of the pick.
Well, he's an underwhelming athlete. He's an underwhelming arm strength quarterback. He's not the biggest guy. He doesn't have a great arm. But, he played a lot of football and won a lot of football games. I mean, this is the thing, he's not going to be there to take Trey's job. I don't think he's ever going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. But I think he's going to be a 10-year backup in the NFL. And Trey needs, he needs guys in that room who are all about the greater goal, which is to win and, to have Trey develop. So Trey's the guy. They've invested. It's not like, well, is he the guy? No, Trey is the guy. So Sudfeld is a 6'4", 225-pound quarterback who they like. And, him and Trey have a good relationship based on what I could tell from a year ago. So now you've got another quarterback there that Trey knows and is comfortable with. And then you add Purdy, and Purdy played a lot of football at Iowa State and won a lot of games. So he doesn't have NFL size. He doesn't have NFL speed. He doesn't have NFL arm. He's a backup. But he knows how to watch film. The ball comes out on time. You're not going to fool him. He's very smart. He's played a lot. And I think when they get into the film, he's going to be a guy who is going to be able to help Trey notice some of the nuances that maybe Trey didn't notice. I mean, there's a big difference between the FCS and the FBS. And Trey had a career in the FCS and he didn't play a lot. He needs some guys who have been there and done it and are going to watch the film, and he's going to be able to learn from them. And I think Purdy's going to be a perfect guy in that regard. For the Niners, there's also a cap benefit here. Now you've got, Sudfeld not making real good money. You've got Trey on his rookie deal, and now you've got your third string guy on a rookie deal. So you're going to be able to spend your money after you move Garoppolo on other parts of your football team. So, and in that regard, that should help. I think he'll help Trey develop by being in the same meeting rooms with him. Purdy's considered a really strong, he's a strong leader, but he also knows where to go with the football. His footwork was solid. You're not going to fool him. He's played a lot of football. So I think his wisdom will help, but he'll never challenge Trey for the starting job at any point, nor do I think he's got potential. I mean, there were other guys too that I would have liked more. I like Nick Starkel quite a bit from San Jose State. but he didn't have the career at with A&M or San Jose State that Brock Purdy had. And then I really like the big 6'7" quarterback. I forget his name, but he was from a small school. I really liked him. I liked Skylar Thompson, but he had already come off the board to the Miami Dolphins. I think Thompson is an interesting backup quarterback. I would have liked Thompson because Thompson moves a little bit better than Purdy, but I think Purdy's going to be a good NFL backup, and I think Trey is going to benefit from having a smart, quarterback who's been there and done that, who's not necessarily there to steal his job and doesn't really have the capability to steal his job, but can help him watch film and break it down and learn the nuances of Kyle's offense. So, and I think that's exactly what Kyle envisions with Purdy. I don't think if you're a coach, you're going to spend all your time developing Trey. So you don't want to have to coach the rest of the room. You want the rest of the room to help you coach Trey. And Purdy and Sudfeld, I think, will help Kyle coach Trey. And I think that's the most important thing. It's not just a very solid backup quarterback. It's also a very cheap quarterback, a smart quarterback, and a guy who can help develop Trey. So for those reasons, I like it. But as far as I don't really like it from the standpoint of I'm not a huge fan of Brock Purdy as a thrower of the football or as an NFL quarterback really making plays from the pocket. I think he's just average. And I think there were probably better players that could have been had there. I would have liked to have seen them go in a different direction there. But I do see their thinking, and I do think he'll help develop Trey.
Okay, well, that sounds great. Year older than Trey, also. Just a little reminder of how young Trey Lance is. Okay.
Yeah. Trey's very young. And now he's got another guy who's played a lot of football. And you know what? It's like you ask Kaepernick, he would tell you that Alex Smith helped him immeasurably as a young player. Why? Because you can have a coach in your ear, but you need that guy who's not a coach who you can ask questions to, who doesn't judge you for your questions. And Alex Smith had that mental maturity. And from the people that I've talked to who have been around that Iowa State program, Purdy has a lot of those same traits.
And
he's competitive, he's smart, he's got the moxie, he's got the reps, he's got the wisdom. And he'll be able to impart some of that wisdom to Trey. And let's be honest, the Niners will go as Trey Lance goes. If he develops incredibly fast and becomes a great quarterback, then they're going to be a Super Bowl contender. Yeah. I would argue right now the Niners Super Bowl window's closed, but that it will open as soon as Trey is up to speed.
I totally agree. All right. And then, we've got three more things on the rundown. We've got the UDFAs, we've got Deebo and Jimmy G. So let's just quickly, you've already touched on a bunch of the undrafted guys, but anybody that you haven't touched on want to talk about?
Yeah, I want to talk about Tay Martin. I think that one was the steal of the draft. The Niners got Tay Martin, who started at Wazoo, transferred to Oak State before the start of the 2020 season. He left Wazoo because of the COVID situation. This is a very special kid. This kid lost his mom in high school to a heart attack, and he's just had to overcome it. And then he goes to the East-West Shrine Bowl. He impressed the scouts there. In the bowl game at the end of the year, he had 3 touchdowns against Notre Dame. They call him Big Play Tay. And, he's 6'3", about 185 pounds. He's not bench press strong, so he didn't do the bench. And there's a lot of people that feel that he's weak and that he doesn't have the vertical or the physical speed to run by anybody. In his 2 40-yard dashes, he clocked 4.68 and 4.59. So that's pretty forgettable speed. But don't forget, Jerry Rice clocked 4.55. And if you watched Tay Martin, he was awesome in the Big 12 title game. He was awesome against Notre Dame. When I say awesome, I'm talking about the best player on the field, either side. Tay Martin, Big Play Tay. And I love that pick. And I also love the other receiver, Tayseer. Taysier's last name? Played for Tayseer Mack, who was the deep threat for Kenny Pickett. Loved him at Pittsburgh. 6'2", 190, field fast, 12 touchdowns, very productive, played in a big conference. I like both those receivers a lot. I think, and then I should say Leon O'Neal from A&M, who is, doesn't have great physical measurable skills, but at safety, he played in the SEC and he made play after play after play. He's not a great coverage player, but he's a terrific box player. So Tay Martin and Leon O'Neal are a couple of my favorites of the undrafted. And then the other guy, the general, we haven't talked about him at all, but the Niners gave a pretty good signing bonus I think they gave him $70,000 guaranteed, a $20,000 signing bonus. I think it was $90,000 total guaranteed for Jeremiah Gemmel, who had 73 tackles at North Carolina. They call him the general. He made a ton of plays for them. To me, he's a guy that could compete for a backup linebacker spot on the roster as well.
Awesome. Okay, and then rounding out this rundown, of course, we got to hit on just the latest with Deebo, man. I think we're all a little bit. I don't know if anybody knows what's going on, including John Lynch. Honestly, including Deebo. So I'd just love to hear your thoughts on, it seemed like it was over after the draft, and all of a sudden he's still making a request. I don't know if there is even a precedent for, like let's say that the Jets came back to us and decided to offer us, Jermaine Johnson and who they take with
Garrett
Wilson. And maybe something else. Like, has that ever even happened? Because the problem is, it's like once you draft your guys, you start falling in love with them, and you don't want to trade them before you see the potential.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with Deebo. It sounds like the 49ers feel like they can hammer out a deal and keep the player happy. And if so, great. Why? Because he's a great player. But we'll see. We'll see. It sounds to me like, they're gonna compromise. That if you said what's gonna happen with Deebo, it's gonna be a gigantic compromise. And here's the compromise: we're gonna use you less as a running back, but we're gonna continue to use you as a running back, but a whole lot less. We're gonna use you more as a receiver because that's what you want, and we're not going to trade you because we don't think we can make a trade that is good for us, and we like you. And I think Deebo ultimately, and then they're going to give more money as well. So I think he'll get probably close to $50 million guaranteed. And so the two sides will compromise on the guaranteed dollars. They'll compromise on the contract. They'll compromise on the usage, and he'll stick around. That's my guess. My guess is that it's a gigantic compromise. Right now, it's a lot of talk and posturing, and he's not going anywhere, and I still want to be traded, and blah, 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 blah. I think they'll compromise. They'll give him enough guaranteed money. They'll stop using him as a runner as much as they have. They'll continue to use him as a runner from time to time to have that flexibility. He'll be happy with the additional dollars, and they'll kiss and they'll make up, and they'll be together going forward. That's my guess on Deebo.
Okay, so yeah, I totally agree with you. And we've been talking a lot about whether Deebo's going to stay, trade, whatever. What we haven't really talked about is let's say they give him this big deal. What is Deebo going to look like in the Trey Lance offense? Because it seems like he really, outside of the carries and all the screens and whatnot, he was really making his money on those quick passes from Jimmy where he'd get it across the middle, and then sometimes he could break some tackles. But that's not really Trey's game. Trey hasn't really shown the ability to just get it. That's the best thing about Jimmy. He just gets it out so quickly. So, I don't know. How do you envision his route tree changing, or just his overall impact as a receiver to the team without, especially taking away some of the running?
Well, I think they're going to, Trey's going to challenge people down the field more. So I think you're going to see more plays like the one you saw against the Texans where, Trey escapes the pocket, breaks out, and then throws a freaking laser down the field to a wide open Deebo Samuel, and he still piles up some run after the catch yardage on the back end. But I think you'll see him less as a runner. Less as a runner, more as a receiver, more down the field. Trey throws bullets. I think, Trey escapes the pocket. I think he'll do more of that. And Deebo's going to have, he'll have less run after the catch yardage, but more overall receiving yardage. That's the way I look at it.
Okay, cool. All right. And then the last thing, Jimmy G. Jimmy. After this draft, it seems like the QB carousel, the QB musical chairs, everybody's kind of sat down, and now Jimmy's just standing up, or John Lynch is standing up. I'm not really sure who is, but what have your thoughts on Jimmy changed at all? It seems like the selection of another quarterback would seem to point towards them thinking they can get rid of him, but just your latest.
Jimmy. Jimmy's going to be gone to the Texans after the shoulder checks out in either late June or probably late June. I would say he'll right around early June to late June. In that window, I think he gets traded. I think he goes to the Texans. I think he goes for maybe a day 2 pick and a conditional day 3 pick. But they will move him to create that room, and they'll give that money to Deebo and to Bosa and get down the road. And Jimmy will go to the Texans, and they're happy with him there. And, him and Davis Mills will battle it out. And my guess is he'll beat out Davis Mills.
Yeah.
That's my guess. Let's thank our sponsors before we get out of here. Dan Coach Amelia, retirement planning specialist, securemoney.com. Give Danny a call today, 925-628-9966. A lot of uncertainty in our world, and you want to make sure your retirement is certain. So Danny's phenomenal. He's a good friend, and he's a phenomenal financial planner. 925-628-9966, securemoney.com on the web. It's not a one-size-fits-all deal. He'll talk to you about your needs, your goals, and secure and with you, the two of you will map out a strategy for your money. And he's a terrific guy, very honest. I absolutely would stand behind him to the bitter end. Dan Coach Emilio, securemoney.com. And then also I want to thank Telmetrics.com or .co, I should say, and Casey Bateman. If you're an orthopedic surgeon, an occupational therapist, a chiropractor, or a physical therapist, Telmetrics is designed for you to use in your practice and will greatly benefit your patients. Telmetrics uses computer vision and artificial intelligence and provides a platform for outpatient rehab therapy services, both in clinical and telehealth environments. Using Telmetrics can improve your patient's experience and much more. So for all your sports injury needs and if you're a physical rehabilitation specialist of any kind, be sure you go to the website, telmetrics.co, Metrix.co. Thanks to Casey Bateman and the good people at Telmetrics for being a proud sponsor of the Krueg Show. Ryan, this was fun, man. We'll do this, maybe one more time, in the weeks ahead as we get a little bit more information. But good little conversation going back and forth on this draft. I think overall, you're getting the sense that I feel it was a good draft for the Niners because they had a terrific after the draft portion that kind of buoyed what they did on draft weekend.
I completely agree. Yeah, I think this was fun. This was a tight 90 minutes. We hit on every one of the Niners draft picks and all their undrafted free agents, plus a little Deebo and a little Jimmy. So yeah, I think this went well. We should do this more in the future.
For Ryan, I'm Larry. Have a great day, everybody.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one, I don't need to hassle. Yeah.